Hi. Today we're going to talk about using a kick drum to trigger live improvised bass parts. To best explain what I mean, I'll tell you what I was trying to achieve practically. I've got a song called Onigiri, which is kind of a mix of Japanese R&B and Weather Report, and it's got a super subby 808 style trap bass line that always hits with the kick in that classic trap way. When I was writing and recording the track, my friend Barney recorded the drums without a pre-existing bass part, and I used the drum replacement function in Logic to turn all his kick hits into MIDI and then put those on the correct notes for whatever chord we were on at the time. We also recorded some kick samples so I could put in some extra kicks if I needed to. This is what the recording sounds like. When it came to playing it live, I wanted my drummer, Charlie, to have the freedom to improvise the part, but still make sure the bass notes hit at the exact same time as whatever kick pattern he did. This is us playing it live. There's a few different ways you can do this with different equipment and at varying levels of complexity. I'll talk about how we did it with the gear that we're using, and then I'll talk about some other options. So the way we did it was we had a trigger attached to the kick. That was then attached to a trigger to MIDI converter. That then ran into the Ableton project and triggered a gate. All right, hit the kick quickly, please. That's fantastic. When the gate was open, you'd be able to hear an otherwise muted bass line. In simple terms, when you hit a kick, you hear the bass. If you don't hit a kick, you don't hear the bass. So let's jump into the computer and see what's going on. So here's my current live Ableton project, which Charlie recently completely redesigned from the ground up. Here's the MIDI input track with a dummy sample that's triggering the gate, and here's the track with the bass line on it with the gate that only opens when the dummy sample is triggered. So you get the attack of the kick and you get the tail of the bass. I'm going to play it now and use the mouse to trigger that sample. To be honest, I do all my production and composition in Logic and only really use Ableton for live playback and occasionally using the Beat Repeat plugin. But for the sake of this demo, we're going to do everything within Ableton just so you can clearly see what the steps are. First thing, let's get a bass. Drag it onto this track, and I'm just going to record in a very simple subby bass part. Lovely. The next step is to build our MIDI trigger. So I'm going to get the drum rack and just grab a kick sample. That sounds great. And I'm going to turn the volume all the way down. I'm also going to turn down the velocity sensitivity. Right, next step is to go back to this bass, and this is where we're going to put our gate in. Now click this little triangle to open this guy up, select the sidechain, and take the input from the drum rack, and set the gate up like this. Bring the floor all the way down, bring the hold up a little bit, and bring the threshold down a little bit as well. You'll have to kind of experiment with this stuff to see what's going to work best based upon your kick sample, but this is the basic principle of how you get this working. So if we press play now, we can't hear the bass at all. Let's see what happens when we get the kick going. So it's working, but there's not enough decay on the note. So let's go back to our gate and let's open up the release and hold a little bit. See what happens. Better. Let's get that going a bit more. All right, let's try again. So that's how it works. You only hear these bass notes when you hit this kick sound. You would then set the MIDI in to your trigger. I don't have the trigger plugged in at the moment, but it would appear here. Alright, hold on. It was actually while shooting this video that I noticed a problem I'd never seen before. If you hit a kick too close to the end of the bar, the next bass note sounds as the gate is closing, which isn't ideal because we really only want to hear a bass note when we're hitting the kick. But I think I might have figured out a way that we can fix this with automation. Let's have a look. So what I'm going to do is a bit of automation on the release here, so that at the end of each note, the release drops down, so cuts it off from playing the next note, but then jumps up in time for the beginning of that next note. Let me show you what I mean. So, add automation in new lane. So we're going to take this and this point. It should really be on the bar, but anyway, you'll see what I mean. Let's zoom in a little bit as well. Sorry, as I said, I'm not a native Ableton user, so I find this a lot easier in Logic. Anyway, what this should do, should allow for this note ending, and even if you play a kick here, it's not going to carry on and trigger this note here. Let's see what happens. I think that worked. Let's do it again. There we go. I think that's the problem solved. So you just copy this bit of automation to all your note changes, and you won't have to worry about any phantom bass notes appearing when they haven't been triggered by a kick drum. So that's how we're doing it live, but there are some other possibilities using different techniques and different equipment. Firstly, there are a lot more melodic and timbral possibilities, different notes and different tones that you could do with this. So let's say if you're using a VST or a plugin, like I was for that demo, what you could do is, whatever note the MIDI trigger is sending in, so in this case I think it was C0, you could use the pitch utility on Ableton and set up some automation so that C0 is being shifted to play whatever the root note of your chord is. For bar 1, it could be D, for bar 2, E, bar 3, F, etc. To make things a little bit more spicy, you could put a little bit of randomization in there so that it'll jump between doing an octave or a fifth or a third. You could also assign the velocity to trigger a filter cutoff opening or closing, or the resonance. This doesn't even have to be limited to bass. You could use it for leads, pads, tuned percussion, vocal samples, anything. Anything. You could even set it up to trigger some kind of sidechain compression for the master track. If you don't have a drum trigger, there is something else you could try, and that is using one of these. A microphone. Put one of these inside a kick drum, or use a split feed from the existing kick drum microphone, run that into a channel in Ableton, and then put a gate on that channel so that only a hard kick will open it, as opposed to general rumble or a snare or a tom hit. Then use the audio from that track as the sidechain input for your sidechain bass track. I'm sure there's also a way of converting that audio to MIDI as well. I hope that's been helpful, and I hope it's given you some interesting or creative ideas for stuff to do within your own live sets or production. And if there's anything else you want me to explore or questions about setting this up, let me know. Until next time.